I am Jahanshah Rashidian, a presenter of Rengi or Rainbow. Rainbow is a television in Paris, and I used to speak through this television with three languages, English, French, and German, mainly for second and third generation of Iranians, but also all those people who like to know about Iran from someone or some people like me and Mr. Eftekhari, who is now my guest, an exact version of Iranian mentality, what an Iranian analysis. Iranian analysis is different from those who do not speak, who do not know the culture, but of course are journalists, professionally okay, but culturally not as well as someone who is Iranian. So welcome, my dear audience, to TV Talk, and I'm happy to receive once more Dr. Bijan Eftekhari as my guest. Bijan, feel at home and be relaxed because we will discuss today two uncomfortable and screwy topics. The first one is the new designed president of the Islamic regime. Attention, not Iran. I distinguish Iran from the Islamic regime, as Iran is a separate entity from mullahs. Mullah Ibrahim Raisi. The second topic will be, of course, another discussion. But the first topic is about Ibrahim Raisi. The second topic is about the strikes of workers in many sectors and their impact on an eruption of protest across Iran, as we see actually in Khuzestan. The Islamic murderous regime, which killed during the last week at least 9 demonstrators in the province of Khuzestan, as people are protesting against shortage of water. The common slogan that they chant actually by Arabic and Farsi people there in Khuzestan, we are thirsty. So that's the main slogan. We are thirsty. Mullahs played all cards. They have no unknown card up one's sleeve, inclusive Ibrahim Raisi as a hardline mullah, with, of course, a black turban, which indicates that he is a Sayyid or an alleged descendant of the Prophet of Islam. Sayyids, as we know, stand on top of the clerical caste. Sayyid Ibrahim Raisi was one of the 4 members of the Death Commission in summer 1988. They ordered and monitored the summary execution of several thousands of political prisoners. Many of these prisoners were spending their term of official sentence. Some were teenagers under 18 at the time of captivity. Some of the victims were pregnant women and still were executed with their baby. The barbarian massacre of summer 88 was issued by a fatwa of death from Ayatollah Khomeini. We know the same fatwa of death that was issued by Khomeini against Rushdie. Raisi, of course, justified this this strange crime as a jihadi duty against enemies of Islam. After successfully achieving the jihad task, as he said, Raisi promoted to high-ranking jobs, what is very common in the Islamic regime, of course. He became Deputy Chief of Justice and, in the last 2 years, as Chief of Justice. We know that since justice in Iran means Sharia. It is another security and repressive organ of the Islamic regime. During the 2 last years, he was chief of this justice. Many protesters were executed or imprisoned. His destination as the president in an electoral force is believed within the scope of more immunity only for the Islamic regime, nothing for Iran and all these people who are thirsty actually. Regime knows the multiform crisis cannot be solved. Along with Raisi, the designation, another brutal mullah called Mohseni Ejei was designed by the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, replacing Raisi as new chief of justice. The designations seem that regime shows muscle to Iranian angry people who have the courage and zeal to struggle against the totalitarian regime, like actually in Khuzestan province. My question, of course, comes from Bijan. Bijan, we hear your additional views firstly in 5 minutes, and tell me what the reasons of such a designations are in your views. Please go ahead, 5 or 6 or 7 minutes as you like.
Thank you, Jahanshah. It's great to be with you again. And you beautifully laid out the story of Raisi and how he rose in the power. He's a murderer. He's a butcher. And these kind of people can get the highest ranking in this regime, because this regime is a murderer and corrupt regime. They have, to be honest with you, they have invaded Iran because they are not popular in Iran. Most of them are not Iranian. They are from other countries. And they don't have any love for Iran, Iranian culture, Iranian people, nothing. They think that they got that and they have all the rights to do whatever they want to do or whatever they desire to do. And they promise that if we leave Iran one day, we're going to give you a country without water, without oil, without any resources. So whatever we see is just the way that regime wants to still has grip on the power. What is going on inside Iran, based on the official information and statistic from the regime, 65% of the Iranians are living under the poverty line. So people are very poor. And I tell you that their information and statistics are always not correct. Most of the time, they just try to make it sugar-coated it or make it nicely. In my opinion, as an economist, I believe it's more than 85% of Iranians are under the poverty line. That's very dangerous, especially for Iranian people and Iranian culture. Right now, we are dealing with the shortage of water, not just the water for agriculture, drinking water, which is only 7% of the water consumption in Iran. Just 7% of the water in Iran is for drinking, is a consumption for drinking water. 93% is for agriculture. Now we have shortage in agriculture section and also in drinking water for people. And what people are doing, they come and on the street, they protest and they say, we are thirsty. We want water for drink. That's one part of the protest. The other side is most of Iran having outage, power outage, almost every day. And for most of the time, at least 12 hours. So, and it's back in Iran right now, it's really hot. It's not warm, it's hot. It's close to 100 or 105 degrees. So it's very hard to live, just have a normal life in Iran. No water, no power, no job, no money. So what do you think? People come to the street and they show their dissatisfaction with this regime. That's, up to here, it's a normal life. We have a regime, incompetent regime, a corrupted regime. They are taking money, they are stealing people's money and don't do whatever a government should do, which is trying to make life easier for the Iranian people. They don't do that. And on the other side, people start to come to the street and show their protest. We don't like you. We don't want you. The thing is, as you mentioned, regime knew that they're gonna face some strikes and protest. What they are trying to do, they are not trying to change the way it was. They are not trying to, make the life easier for people. They say, we're gonna kill you. Don't come to the street. Don't protest. Don't say I'm thirsty. We're gonna kill you. And how we know that? Because they have bring a butcher, a person that all the Iranian and probably the world, at least European Union and United States, they know this guy as a butcher of the people. And they bring this guy to the power to show to Iranian people that, some people call him angel of death. Now, angel of death is here, and he has the power, and he has the support of Ali Khamenei. So you better just, stay home, don't show any protest, and pretend that you have a good life. This is what exactly regime is trying to do by bringing this guy to the power as the president of the Iran, which I agree with you. They don't have anything in common with our Iranian. They are just a bunch of invaders. Go ahead. I can't hear you. Your microphone is
Okay.
mute.
Okay, excuse me. Thank you for your statement. You mentioned 3 important points, that only 7% of our water in Iran is drinkable. The rest of that is not, it's for agriculture, and still we have shortage for both of them. Second point, that you said 80% are under poverty line. And that is huge, is very huge. I think no country may have so many people, so many poor people. I think, therefore, Raisi is not, it's not a magic card. It's to solve the multiple problems actually in Iran. I add that you mentioned that the media in all over the world not react. That's true. Butcher is a word which is used in many papers when I read in French or in German. This describes that the media are more conscious, more vigilant, feeling more responsibility about the people of Iran who have been left alone for 43 years. All over the world now knows that the people of Iran have unpleasant life under the Islamic regime, under the butcher. Media in Germany and in France change their tone and even urge that Raisi, whose nickname, as you said, in Iran is the butcher of terror, must be brought before the International Criminal Court, the same as happened for Nazi criminal people. There is no difference actually. Only probably the angle of crimes is different, but the motivation is the same. Before the court of Nuremberg, we had so many people from Nazi side who were condemned, mostly to death. We don't want to use that penalty in our new future country. In the constitutional, in our constitution, death penalty must be completely aside. But someone like Raisi, who has blood of Iranian people on his hands, and now we know that he has committed many crimes, at least 5,000, some people even estimate 30,000 were killed only in summer '88, when he was one of these 4 members of that commission, which was, of course, ordered, which was issued by a fatwa of Ayatollah Khomeini. I have seen many articles in French and German, and they want to remove really their omerta or apology or a kind of closing eyes what is going on in Iran. And now they criticize even severely pile of scandals from the Islamic regime and their corruption, their crimes, and their repression in Iran. In Germany, in France, I see that probably you see them, the same papers in America. Regime now is in a crisis of identity. its legitimacy is under questions by all over in the world. And criminal regime now somehow has understood the situation. Therefore, they try to bring Raisi to make people fear, not to make people hoping to solve problems. Of course, it remains the regime's lobbyists in America, in Europe, and all over Western country is still active. Each of us, not a bunch of these stooges with their media and think tanks and all possibilities they have to make run the propaganda machinery of the regime outside of the country. I think the most notorious is, as we know, NIAC lobbyist, the BBC Corporation, and some people who are active in these corporations. There are many other, of course, smaller televisions or media who are at least dubious. The West has tolerated political Islam for many, many years and ignored the destiny of our people under such a barbarian regime because of two main reasons. The first reason was opportunism because of their interest. And the second one was because our diaspora, I and you and 6 other million Iranians, we could not confront these lobbyists in the West. We could not introduce what is going on in Iran exactly. We could not demask the regime and show them its ugly face. And there are now many authorities, local authorities, who know the situation. We have to make them, to kick them out. NIAC or some other people like this lady Hicks, I think her name is. All these elements are now active because we are not so active to prevent it. I want you to talk about that. The question is also what we know with all these problems and there are a bunch of apologists and lobbyists here. What should be challenges? What should be the challenges of our opposition ahead regarding this situation? I was telling you last time in Persian language, I think, that South Africa could get rid of this apologist and this kind of lobbyist because they have a very strong and very mobilized opposition outside of their country, and they could react. They could really affect. What is your opinion? How can we get rid of these, at least in our realm? That means in the West. What is in Iran is different, but we as 4, 5, 6 million Iranians, how can we permit that someone like this woman, Hicks or whatever her name is, can come and say that in Khuzestan they're not people. They are people who are shooting their own people. They are also a part of them are coming from Israel or from Mujahideen, and they actually design a very fake scenes, very fake opposites of what is going on in Kyrgyzstan. How can we stop them? Go ahead, 10 minutes if you like.
That's a very good question. How come the regime's agents out of the Iran are making some progress and they are successful, like as you mentioned, Nayak in United States, and the head of the Nayak is that clown Trita Parsi. The reason is, my friend, European countries and American countries, North America, they always, within last 43 years, turned a blind eye on this regime. They didn't want to see what is going on. And the reason was they wanted to have business with this murderer regime. Business was their first priority. They talk about humanism, they talk about human rights. These are just tools for them. Most of these policy makers in United States, in Canada, in European Union, they are hypocrites. They are hypocrites, and they try to turn a black eye on this regime. Do you think that they didn't know what happened in 1988 in Iran? They didn't know that this regime has executed more than 30,000 of Iranian people. Some of them, even they have finished their prison sentence and they were probably due to be free. They executed them. Do you think they didn't know? None of them knew about that. They knew, but they preferred not to talk about it because they wanted to make business with this, to make deals with these mullahs. Everybody knows oil is black, but it's very sweet. So they love it. They love the oil. And they want to sell their products to Iranian regime. So for that reason, they talk about Iranian women rights, and when they want to come to Iran as a diplomat, they put a veil, they cover themselves like, Stone Ages, and come to Iran to make a deal. So the reason that these regimes, lobbies, or agents are growing and have success because the European countries and America and Canada, they want to see them to be success. They want them to represent the regime as a kind of moderate regime that is on the first steps of democracy. See, they have election, they elect their representatives, they elect their president. So give them time, give them time. Don't be so rough on them. Try to, help them to come to the democracy. That's a big, big lie. They know there is no democracy in Iran. They know it's just a kind of, circus. But they want to justify their relation with this regime in the eye of their people. They want to say, we know this is not a very pleasant regime, but we have to help them to come to the international community. We have to help them, and they have reformists. The reformists are very good people. So let help them. Don't try to isolate them. If one day they come to this understanding that this regime is not giving them whatever they want immediately, and in the in one day you will see they change and they start to say, no, 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 this regime is very dangerous. Exactly what happened in South Africa. In South Africa, for years, the regime in South Africa was killing people, sentencing people, corrupt regime, whatever it was, and nobody cared until they realized that this is going to be a dangerous. This is going to make Africa a kind of rouge regime. So we have to change that. And they suddenly started to, talk about the human rights has been violated in South Africa, and this regime is not a human regime, and they started to isolate the regime. Same gonna happen in Iran, I'm sure about that, but we won't forget. I'm telling you, we as the people of Iran, we won't forget that. For 43 years, these countries put up with this murderer regime, and because of that, they have to help Iranian people. For example, in United States, the country I live, you can see the regime's lobbyists like Trita Parsi and some other people in CNN and MSNBC, probably on weekly basis. They come and they justify what is going on in Iran. But you never, ever have seen someone to come and talk against the regime. So who is promoting them? And I'm sure there are people in the US government that's supporting that, telling to CNN, and I'm not saying ordering, just giving their advice that if you want to talk about Iran, invite Trita Parsi. And Trita Parsi comes, and he's smart. He never says that I'm a regime lobbyist. He says that I'm an Iranian American who thinks about that we have to have peace with the United States. And starting from that we want to have peace. So let's do this, let's do that. Don't push them, don't force them. Try to understand this is a different culture. These kind of lies, which a lot of people love to hear that in government, in Congress of the United States. And I'm sure this is the same scenario in European countries. People like Elahe Hicks, they come and they say, no, these are not thirsty people. They are not asking for water. They are Israel agent killing Iranian forces. So, and why they invite these kind of people? Why they don't invite people like you or like me to explain what exactly is going on in Iran? Because they don't want to. They still thinking that it's better to have a deal with this regime. We can make money.
True. But we have to do also our efforts, maybe to change the situation. The regime actually, not only in Iran, but most barbarian regimes are following some Machiavelli advice. I don't know, it was in the last emission with you or in which language, I explained that once, that Islamic regime also follows Machiavelli advice, and very well. To have the force of a lion and the cunning of the fox. That's what Machiavelli advised to the prince in his famous book, Il Principe in Italian. Mullahs know that. And even if they don't know, people like Nayak people, like this Hicks, Elijah Hicks, who have been studying deeply in Europe, in America, they can teach them. They teach them as a principle how to hold the power at any price, at any circumstances. We know that we talked about economy and interest of the West. Of course, we know that. But we have to do also something to change that. We know also regime is in a very economic depression. You as economists explained that. Actually, you said over 80% are under the poverty line. And water shortage is a very serious danger, not only for now, but for generations coming in next 2-3 centuries. More than economic depression, I think, due to shrinking of production and consumption, the regime has its legitimacy problem. Legitimacy crisis is more important for the regime, and they try to do everything to save their parasitic life, despite all these multiple problems they have. And I think the regime knows, as you said, that awareness of people is the most dangerous enemy of them, because people courage, people who are conscious, they have courage and zeal to struggle against this barbarian regime, as you said, this force of occupation, as you described now. This force of occupation is there as long as people keep somehow silence. There is no, that is the reason. You talked about pacifists. Pacifists want people to be tolerant, do not do any act of violence. They do not say that regime is violent, but they want people to not to be violent against the violence of the regime. That's, of course, very immoral, what they say. And that's against any law, any common law in any country, as you know. People of Iran, about 43 years ago, I remember, they were ready, more than 90%, to dedicate their life for Islam and Khomeini and the Islamic regime, of course. And this fanaticism now is going to disappear from mentality of our conscious and vigilant people. And that's a great, great step in our history. I think this step goes toward a renaissance in the Islamized world that will very likely sparkle from Iran, from our people. So our people, our warrior people, will be the saviors of the whole Islamized world. It, I think, is a very important chapter of history, human history. Do you think that the regime, despite all these problems, despite that sparkle is underway to change the course of history, do you think still they try to hang sword of Damocles over the neck of our people, because awareness and courage of people is their most important enemy? That's something that's dangerous, that put probably regime in very, very serious impasse, serious problems. How do you think Is the regime not ready to put its sword of Damocles over the neck of all people because of its own continuity, because they can only so prolong their parasitic life? Is that's what you think on what we have to do? We should be also warriors. We should be also brave to challenge the regime with all means we have. We forget those people who propagandists of the regime probably, or because of their some kind of ideology, they want people to be pacifist in a situation that the regime is the most aggressive. How do you judge them? What is their judgment when they call people being pacifist in front of a very, very savage regime? In the whole history, in 14th century of political Islam, they have never been indulgent. They never leave a country that occupied. The only exception was Spain in 16th century. Mark, both are belong to you. Go ahead, 10 minutes, please. And then we can a little bit discuss about the strike. If you like, you can add the question of the strike. You can explain what kind of impact this strike can have in promoting a general struggle from the whole population against the regime in one way, only one way, how to get rid of the regime, how to make for the regime. Go ahead, please.
Jahanshah, you and I are old enough to remember the day that Khomeini, the founder of Islamic regime, came to Iran. We remember that about 1 million went to say to welcome to this guy. So he was popular. We remember that most of the political parties was agree with him because he promised democracy, freedom, everything. And we still remember 6-7 years after he died, after he came and he died, people went to say goodbye to him probably twice than the first time. So this was a popular regime at the beginning. But within last, let's say, 35 years, now it's the most unwanted regime in the world. And as you said, a lot of people had a kind of belief in Islam, and now a lot of them has changed their mind. That's one of the reasons that a lot of people say we want secularism in Iran. Religion is something belongs to you. You can keep it, but don't bring it in the public opinion. It should be separate. Government should be separate from the Sharia law or this kind of stuff. So what happened? People like you, me, and other people as the so-called opposition have tried to bring awareness among the Iranian. And the result is today we can see that in this recent election, or it's better to say selection, it came that only 10% participated, 10%. And 5% of this participation, they just gave a white paper as their vote. It means they were against the regime, but for some reason they wanted to show that, yes, I voted because a lot of people, they afraid if they don't want vote, then the regime will stop or cut off their benefits. So this is the most unpopular, unwanted regime in the world after 35 years of the death of its founder. That happened because of people called opposition. Today, Iranian people are aware of what this regime is made of. This regime is against Iran, Iranian benefit, Iranian people, Iranian culture, everything. They hate us. And when people come to street and say, hey guys, we need water, they kill them. That's their answer. And you know what? Because that's the only option they have. They don't have any other options. It's a corrupted regime. Let me give you an example. Recently, I believe it's from 3-4 days ago, the government of the Khuzestan province said that, you know why we don't have water? Because the budget for the preparing water and bringing water to Khuzestan within last 10 years was 1.5 billion for last 10 years. And 750 million of 1.5 billion, I mean, half of the budget is missing. We don't know where that money goes and has gone. So you see the volume of the corruption in this regime. And it's funny, but nobody has been arrested for that. So they know that 750 million is budget of the water in Khuzestan is missing. They know that, but they don't arrest anybody. I can say one of the people who got that money is the same guy. He's saying that we missed some money here. So it's a bunch of thugs and thieves and mobs on the head of the regime.
Okay.
And what they care is to get their money from the pocket of Iranian and send it to where? Canada. Canada is the paradise for these thieves. That's why I'm saying that American countries or North American countries are a kind of partner with these murderers.
Okay, Bijan, we have a second topic. We have only a few minutes time. That is about the strikes of workers since June 21. It covers many sectors of activities like metallurgy, oil, gas, and petrochemical industries, or operators, of course. The strike signs now every day important, serious problems, more and more ample, and it tramples the regime's illusion that it is safe from the wrath of our people. Do you think the worker strikes can join the civil struggles like that of those people you mentioned in Khuzestan due to the penury of water? As you said, only 7% water can be drunk in Iran. Do you think this fresh uprising in Khuzestan can be combined with the struggles of working class? And second question, if you want to answer, do you think that the strike, which is called 1,400 campaign, which is probably hinting to the end of the Islamic regime at the first year of the beginning of Iranian calendar. Do you think this is to refer to that important point that the combination of workers and civilian struggles is now in a stage of making for the regime? Please go ahead, 5 minutes.
I believe the days of this regime is numbered. They are at the end, and they know that, and that's why they bring him as a president. So there is no doubt about that. The strikes are probably the most important tools in hands of Iranian to topple this regime, and I support that. I think that, generally speaking, we like to see civilized obedience in Iran, because that's brings the less, let's say, we pay less cost for fighting this regime. So I support that too. Generally speaking, these strikes will continue because they don't have any solution. The only solution is killing people, which is not a solution. That's the final stage of a dictatorship. So I'm very optimistic about the future. Unfortunately, they're going to kill a lot of Iranian, but anyway, they are killing Iranian people in different ways. So I'm sure these murderers will kill more people, but I see the light at the end of the tunnel. And there are very smart people back in Iran that they are, let's say, good leaders. They organize these strikes, and they bring people into the street to protest. And very soon they're going to find each other, and they're going to have a very organized strikes and protests in the street. We will see that very soon. And at the end, I hope that European countries, the policymaker, European people are very compassionate and human people. I love them. Same for American people. But I hope that policymakers open their eyes and they realize that the life of this regime is gone. They're not going to stay in the power. People will be. So support Iranian people, support the protesters, support the strikers, and try to be more understanding about the opposition of the regime. Try to bring them to and talk with them and see what people think inside Iran. Thank you.
So you are optimist. You are optimist.
I am, yes.
Contrary to those pessimist people, whom we can call treacherous people, Iranians are known as brave and even warriors, like their pre-Islamic ancestors. They are brave enough to walk in lions' den, or better to say, in demons' den, because this regime is really a demon. And on the other hand, it was Rustam, our legendary Rustam, our hero, who walked in a demon's den and killed him. So you are optimist. We can kill this beast, this demon, and free our country. I think you want to do something else at 8 o'clock, you told me more. So we have to finish this emission. Of course, we'll continue that. We have so many, you just opened so many questions, and I have to ask these questions again to explain them more detailed. Always with the detailed questions, we can ask more questions, and that bring in our spirit also some more ideas we need actually. Thank you, Bijan Johan, my good friend. Thank you, my rainbow audience. And thank you also for you that invited me yesterday or for yesterday to your Persian program, and we talked about the same subject in Farsi. I hope people who speak Farsi also listen that. It is in Mani television. Thank you. If you have last words, if you want to say something else, 2 minutes to you. Please, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Jahanshah. I don't have anything else to add. I hope in the next future, very soon, we're going to have another talk show talking about progress in Iran, I mean, Iranian people. And I really appreciate what you are doing for Iranian people to bring awareness all over the world among the Iranian. And I thank you too.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bijan Eftekhari, a good friend of mine, and we have been working together in this kind of missions. You are a presenter of Mani television. You can also start probably in Mani television an English program. Why not? And I will be, of course, your guest. And for the second and third generation of Iranians who do not possibly speak so good Persian as we do or their parents do. So they need to understand what is the basic problems of Iran and to be more attracted, to feel more responsibility for their own country, their own culture, their own parents. Thank you very much, and thanks again for all those people who follow this program. See you later. Goodbye.
Thank you.